show of hands, who's at their first live TED event here today? Oh, welcome. This will change everything for you people. I first went to TED in 2005. I went to Monterey. This is my 8th live TED event. I'm a bit of a TED addict, and so I've had a good deal of experience answering the question on your screen. I have to answer that to a lot of people because I'm such an addict, I talk about it all the time. The nice thing about TED is the clicker, okay. The nice thing about TED is now that TED Talks are online, it's a little easier to explain this to people when you can show them a sword-swallowing statistician or a documentary filmmaker, or hopefully after today, a great conversation about gang-banging whales. It's a little easier to answer, but it's not always you can't always answer it the same way for the same people. So I've had a little bit of experience with this. If you look on the TED website, this is how TED explains itself. This does not work in a 140-character Twitter-based economy. This doesn't work. So TED, this doesn't help. Sorry, for TED employees. You can go with the short version, which I love, ideas worth spreading. I'm an advertising guy, so I like taglines, but this really doesn't help either because it's too short. So what I've realized is I've organized the people that I've had to talk to about what TED is and to explain it to them in 5 different levels, 5 different target audiences, if you will. And I realized that they are segmented by the level of stress you might have in explaining TED to these people. So I thought, what's a good way of representing 5 levels of stress? Well, we have this amazing thing. This thing is so great. This thing has protected us for 8 years, people. So I thought we'd use this. Let's start with low risk that I have to explain. Random curious strangers at the airport who ask me what TED is. Why do random curious strangers ask me what TED is? Well, I tend to carry this thing around me everywhere I go. I don't have it with me today. But they ask questions like, is your name Ted? What is TED? The explanation I usually give them is simply, hey, you know what, go to TED.com anyway. I'm going to my gate now. Please get away from me. The next level up, I've called friends, coworkers, and family. Basically, it's my mother, who, again, is not really interested in hearing conversations about ganging, banging whales. And I want to get a little credit for the exclusivity of the TED event with my mother, so I usually explain it to her as, TED is an exclusive event I go to, and I get a hobnob with the smartest nerds I've ever met. And it's really nice to see some of those nerds in the audience today. I recently had this experience. I'm a nerd enough to talk about TED on the first date. And this one was a little trickier. I'll tell you what I did. I ended up explaining to her that, well, you know, Al Gore had these interesting slides that he wanted to show us about this thing called global warming. So this let me use a little bit of the exclusivity of TED, the celebrity factor, and a little bit of the social coolness all together, so it sort of worked. Now we're going to start getting into a high-stress explanation of TED. I had this experience. I ran my own business. I know this is being videotaped, and I know there are some members of the government here today, so I'm not going to go into detail about why I had to explain this to the IRS. But suffice it to say that what I talked about is the fact that TED is not just a one-day event, but it's actually the community of these people. And you're going to find yourself talking to these people a lot over the course of the next year, and the fact these business contacts and this networking really does pay off. Finally, the toughest stress, the hardest audience to explain TED to. It's yourself. How are you going to explain, how are you going to think about how TED has impacted you? I'm going to tell you my story. There's this thing called TED Moments. I'm going to tell you my TED moment. The year is 2005. I went to this conference in Monterey out of nowhere. I didn't really know what to expect out of it, but I was so fascinated. There were so many good speeches, and I pulled my notebook out, and I was writing just furiously down in my notebook. And it was the last day of TED, and I woke up really late. The TED parties are really good. You're going to wake up really late tomorrow, and you're going to be really hungover. And I woke up, and I'm getting ready in the morning, and I'm sitting there, and I'm just showering and shaving and trying to get ready all the time. And just as I got ready to rush out to the conference, what you might expect did happen to me, as my beautiful notebook with all my notes went right into the toilet. And I will tell you, my way of explaining TED to myself is TED is the only event with content that's worth sticking my hand in a toilet for. I would do it again tomorrow. I want to know what each and every one of you has to say about your own TED story. Please send them to me. I will put the best ones on my blog. Thank you so much.